All right, let's dive into something that might feel a little uncomfortable. We're going to talk about the idea that sometimes we as teachers are actually the ones causing our students' mistakes. I know, it's a bit of a counterintuitive thought, but honestly, getting your head around this is one of the biggest leaps you can make in your teaching.
So I've got to ask you, right off the bat, could your teaching, even when you have the absolute best intentions, be setting your students up to make mistakes? Now look, this isn't about blame, not at all. It's about being curious professionals, about reflecting on what we do. Think of this explainer as a tool to help us all spot those hidden traps in our own classrooms.
Because that's really what we're talking about here, a hidden source of error. It's something that often just flies right under the radar in the daily hustle and bustle. And here's the wild part. These errors don't happen because we don't care. They actually come from really common teaching practices. A quick explanation to save time, a simplified rule to make things easier, or even the worksheets we use. So our goal today is to put a spotlight on these habits so we can start to tackle them.
To really get to the bottom of this, we're going to put on our detective hats. We're going to investigate 3 real-world case files. These are moments where something a teacher did led directly to a student's error. Let's see what we can find out. Okay, our first case file zeroes in on just one vocabulary word, conceal. Seems simple enough, right? But as you're about to see, the details make all the difference. So a student comes up with this sentence, "She concealed behind the curtain." And you hear that and think, that sounds almost right, doesn't it? But nope, it's grammatically wrong. The real question is, why? Where did this specific mistake come from? Well, it turns out the clue is in how the teacher explained the word. And this slide just lays it all out. On the left, you see the problem. The teacher took a shortcut and said conceal is the same as hide. But think about it. You can say she hid, but you can't just say she concealed. Conceal needs an object. She concealed the letter. She concealed her surprise. By giving that sloppy synonym, the teacher literally built the error. The better way, over on the right, is to give the whole picture, the full word grammar.
All right, on to case file number 2. This time, it's not about grammar. It's about something way more subtle, connotation. That feeling or vibe a word has.
So the student says, "I met some cronies in the pub." Grammatically, it's perfect, but it just sounds weird, right? Socially awkward. You'd never actually say that about your friends. And again, this mistake didn't come out of nowhere. It was born from the information the student was given. And here's why. The teacher correctly said crony is an informal word for friend, but they completely missed the most crucial bit of information, its negative feeling. A crony isn't just a buddy, it usually implies some shady stuff like corruption or favoritism. Without a real context, like the example on the right, the teacher basically handed the student a loaded word without the safety instructions. And for our last case, we're looking at a classic trap. What happens when we give students a rule, but we don't tell them where the rule stops? This is how overgeneralization happens, and it's a huge source of errors. A student comes out with this, "Never go I to the cinema." You can see exactly what they're trying to do, right? They're working so hard to apply that new grammar rule about inverting the subject and verb after the word never. So what went wrong? The problem was an incomplete rule. The teacher told them to invert after words like never, but forgot to mention that this trick only works for negative adverbs. See, learners are logical. They'll take a rule and run with it as far as they can. If we don't draw clear lines in the sand for them, like showing them it doesn't work for positive words like frequently, we're practically asking them to make new mistakes. Okay, so we've seen how easily things can go wrong. Let's flip the script and talk about solutions. What can we actually do to stop these errors before they even start? Well, here's a 5-step playbook we can take straight from those case files. First, give the full context. That's how we avoid the crony problem. Second, give complete information. No more oversimplifying the rules, which is what caused the mess with conceal and never. Third, and this is a big one, we have to really analyze the language ourselves before we try to teach it. Fourth, use super precise examples that only show the one thing you're trying to teach. And finally, number 5, just be explicit. Tell your students exactly what you want them to notice. Don't make them guess. But prevention is only half the story. Now we get to the final and maybe the most difficult challenge. What do you do when a lesson is going down in flames, right in front of your eyes? This takes a special kind of professional courage. It's all about fighting something called the sunk cost fallacy. We've all been there. It's that feeling you get when you're halfway through a terrible movie, but you keep watching because, well, you've already invested an hour of your life in it. That exact same thing happens in our classrooms. We stick with an activity that we spent hours preparing, even when we see it's an absolute train wreck. All the warning signs are there. The students are bored, or totally lost, or even worse, the task is actually causing more errors. But because we put in all that prep time, we feel like we just have to push through. But here's the bottom line. The truly great teachers are brave enough to pull the plug. Ditching a failing activity isn't a sign that you failed. It's a sign that you're responsive, that you're putting your students' learning ahead of your own ego. It means you're ready to pivot and do something useful instead. So as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with this question to really think about. After seeing how easily we can create errors with a sloppy synonym, an incomplete rule, or by just stubbornly sticking to a bad plan, what's one teaching habit, big or small, that you're going to reconsider